another journey, and today's journey is with a career spanning over 3 decades in a human services field. Our guest stands at the forefront of fostering emotional and mental well-being. A seasoned trainer, award-winning speaker, author and coach, our guest brings a wealth of knowledge and a deep passion for healing and personal growth. There is more, but I'll let her tell us. But we welcome Trina Kennedy to the journey.
Thank you, David. So excited to be here with you today.
You're welcome, and as many of my followers will know, this is now into the 11th season of the journey, and 11 seasons over 15 episodes. So that's
Wow. Congratulations. That's fantastic.
thank you,
Well
and
done.
it's an achievement in its own right, because talking about well-being, COVID was on the rise and increasing when I started the journey. So, and I only developed COVID, I think, like a year after I started the podcast. So. It's been an emotional journey in its own right, mind for how the journey started, and obviously I started it as well because I like interviewing people. But I want you to tell us about your earliest memories. Like my earliest memories, obviously growing up, but anything that sparked your childhood that inspired your journey to what it is today.
Sure. I'd love to share that with your listeners. I guess my first, I was born to a two-parent home. My mom and dad. I was the firstborn of three children, all girls. My first sister came along when I was 5, and then my third sister came along when I was 8. So a little bit of an age gap for sure. I don't have a ton of early memories of my childhood. I'm not sure what that's about. But I think for the most part, we were a pretty typical family. My dad worked, my mom stayed home with us, which was a full-time job in and of itself.
Hmm.
But my journey, I think, really started when I recall as a young child starting to feel alone. I started to feel as a child that I couldn't trust people. And I know, as I wrote in my book, From Trauma to Triumph and What Lies Between, that I think a lot of the ways my parents parented, and my parents loved me the best they could. I want to make that really clear. This isn't to bash them at all. I think it's just really important to recognize how sometimes patterns in how we treat others creates potential trauma. So I certainly had a lot of relational trauma with my parents. My mom was quite emotionally distant, which as a young child, we have egocentrism, which means we internalize everything to make it about us. It's not like I was standing back going, oh, my mom had a lot of her trauma growing up, and this is why she's emotionally distant. You don't do that as a child, right? You
Hmm.
internalize it as, right, maybe I'm not lovable, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. My dad still to this day, he's 76, a very hard worker. And he really showed his love by working hard and providing for us. And he did a great job of that. However, he was a little emotionally unavailable as well. So, when I would be distressed as a child, and I was a very emotional child, and be crying, for example, the response I would get would be, quit your crying, or I'm going to give you something to cry about. And so what that does for a child when their distress cycle is activated, I'm children need a primary caregiver or an adult in their life to, come to them and hold them and reassure them that it's okay and validate their emotions, because when that happens, their distress cycle is completed. However, time after time after time, when those situations happened, my distress cycle wasn't completed, and that's actually what creates trauma, is when those cycles are activated but not completed. So, for example, I remember probably at the age of, I'm going to say probably 10 or 11, my next door neighbor, Carrie, I went over on a Saturday to hang out with her, and she was lying on her bed sobbing. And I went over to her and I put my arms around her. I'm like, what's wrong, Carrie? Why are you crying? And, she said, my parents are getting a divorce. And so this was in the late 70s, early 80s. And, that was unheard of in my circle. And I just remember my heart hurting so bad for her. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to help her. Anyways, I ended up going back home and I was crying in my room because of my heart hurting for her and just thinking, my gosh, how would I feel if, that was happening to my parents? And my dad walked by and he said, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying? And I said, so I explained, Carrie's mom and dad are getting a divorce. I'm really sad. And he's like, oh, geez, don't be so dramatic and sensitive, and walked away. So what that tells me as a child is I'm overreacting, I'm being emotional, there's something wrong with me, and my feelings aren't valid. And so those situations happen time after time after time. It's kind of like death by a thousand little cuts. I had
Mm,
other traumas as well. I was held back in grade three, and I remember that was probably the first time I recall feeling shame, not embarrassed, but shame. There's a big difference between being embarrassed. So that's, embarrassed or guilty for something we did, where shame is there's something wrong with me at our core. And then I was bullied. I had acne really bad. And, there was boys in the hallway who would sing, pimples and zits, pimples and zits. Trina's going to get lots more pimples and zits as I'd walk through the hallway, and everybody would laugh. So there was definitely a series of events that happened. And, when we don't have a safe space to hold our emotions and process them and let them move through our bodies, they're like big, heavy rocks that get put in a backpack. And we carry those rocks around in the backpack wherever we go. Well, you only have so much room in that backpack. And
mm,
what happens is when that backpack overfills and there's not a single space for one more rock, that is going to impact our mental well-being. And I certainly had anxiety and depression. And by the age of 16, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I tried to take my life. And it was quite a serious attempt. And I ended up in the hospital and I was in the psychiatric ward for 2 weeks, which was absolutely horrible. And I think made it so much worse. And then I had to go back to school and, everybody was snickering and laughing and treating me, like if they, said the wrong word, I would, combust. And so it was just a series of buildup of things. And it was a really, really difficult time. And my mom, thank God, had enough foresight to see that I was still struggling and not know how to help me. And again, this was the, mid 80s. There was not a lot known about how to support people who had a suicide attempt. She took me to see an incredible psychologist by the name of Joan Bailey. I'll never forget her. I can see her in my mind, just as if I'd seen her yesterday. And she really was, David, the first person in my life, adult, who made me feel seen, heard, and understood.
yeah.
She held such a safe space for me. She didn't judge me. She didn't try to fix me. And it was such a powerful relationship. And it was from that place because I was still contemplating suicide. This was probably 3 months after my attempt. And I had a plan in my mind and I was going to do it. And I was going to make sure I did it right. And she really helped me unpack that heavy backpack that I was carrying. And, it was such a pivotal moment for me in my life. And I remember walking away from that experience when we, stopped therapy, which was several months later. And I just remember thinking, I want to do that for people. I want to be that person that makes people feel seen, heard, and understood
Yeah.
because I now know how incredibly powerful and life-changing that experience was. And that really changed my life and set me on a trajectory, to where I am now. Like I took my child and youth care diploma, which was at first supporting high risk youth in residential homes who weren't able to be in their family homes for a variety of reasons. And then I moved into going back to school and taking social work. And then I went back to school. I'm kind of a lifelong learner. Took my bachelor in human services, and so I've had this incredible honor of supporting probably thousands of people now by 30 some years in their own journeys in really difficult situations, marginalized people, oppressed people, significant mental health, substance use issues. And, and sometimes those feel really overwhelming and like there's not a lot I can do because so much of it is systemic stuff, but I knew at the end of the day, at least if I held that safe space in the moment of our interactions that made them feel seen, heard, and understood, I knew the significance of that for people. And, you know, it just launched me into the world of mental health because everybody has mental health. There is no health without mental health. Um, and, you know, my own healing journey, Joan was certainly the start of my own healing journey, but, you know, it's continuing today. I'm 52 years old and I'm still on that journey. And, you know, I wrote my book, it just launched in October, and it really was about my story of my relational trauma, but as well as my knowledge professionally about trauma and healing. So it's kind of intertwined. And I
Mm.
really wanted people to understand because we see trauma, we think of trauma as, you know, oh, sexual abuse and physical abuse and, you know, those big things, which for sure can be for people. But, you know, I think sometimes those experiences that we have as children growing up go unrecognized as potentially being traumatic. And what happens is, you know, it creates wounds. And I didn't recognize till years, decades into my relationship with my husband, where we were high school sweethearts and, you know, we're celebrating 29 years of marriage this June. But it has not been easy because I carried all those wounds into our relationship. So that's the problem with unhealed trauma is it becomes an invisible force that, you know, shapes our lives. It shapes the way, you know, we live, the way we love, the way we make sense of the world. And it really is at the root of our deepest wounds and unaddressed trauma keeps, you know, perpetuating painful patterns in our lives till we acknowledge them and change them. And it kept showing up in my relationship with my husband because it's very passive aggressive because I learned as a child it's not safe to talk about how you feel, so stuff it. So it came out in other ways. And, you know, and when you have passive aggressive and he had some stuff from his childhood trauma, you know, it builds resentment and anger. And we came at a crossroads in our marriage when our kids launched because we, you know, we didn't have distractions anymore when we weren't parenting, you know, and it could have went, you know, sideways, but thankfully we dug in and did the work. He did as well, and you know, we've come out the other side. But I just really felt I wanted to share my story and say, you know, these things impact us as children,
Mm.
and this is how things get passed down intergenerationally. And I wanted to also change that legacy for my children, my grandchildren, and you know, any other families that come after I'm long gone to heal those intergenerational patterns that were passed from me, from my dad and my mom, and were passed to them by their parents. And I think, you know, our own healing as parents is one of the greatest gifts we can give our children. And so I'm just really excited to continue to do this work. And, you know, I've now become a certified woman-centered coach. I now know that our unhealed traumas gets in the way of us unlocking our greatness, women and men. And so I'm really excited to continue my journey to support people in a different way through my book, through speaking, and now through coaching. So that's kind of what's led me to where we are today, David.
Yeah, and just talking about I'm not wanting to talk about it too much because I know traumas can be, in a way, even if you are healing, it's still a way of coping. So I try and avoid talking about it. But hidden traumas as a child, they are there because, and this is from how I understand it from my perspective, you know, you try and talk to someone, not everyone will hear you straight away, especially as a child. It's like you're 9 years old, for example. Who's going to listen to you at 9 years old unless you physically go up to someone and say, look, I'm this, or I need, you're not heard as clear as you are. And even as an adult, you're not really clearly heard unless you do something seriously to make them listen to you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, David. And certainly that's something I teach in my mental health first aid training, right? Is that we need to be empathetic. And empathetic means holding a safe space without judgment, recognizing when somebody is, you know, maybe not themselves and saying, "Hey, is everything okay?" Because feelings are vulnerable and we are taught from a very young age to suck it up and soldier on. And when we are distressed, it creates distress in other people because we don't know how to manage it. It's like, ooh, I don't know what these feelings are that you're bringing up in me, and I don't like it. So I'm going to quickly tell you what you need to do to fix this, so this ends and we can move on. And I think it's well-meaning, but the impact it has to the other person says you shouldn't feel the way you feel, and it shuts us down further. And so emotions are messy and uncomfortable, but I think it's really important to understand whether it's trauma connected or not, or we're just having a bad day, or whatever the situation might be, that all feelings are welcome and all feelings are part of life. Feelings aren't good or bad, they just are. And feelings, the new research coming out, feelings are energy. And so when we don't feel them or make space to process them, they get stuck in our nervous system. And so it's really about just honoring them and going, okay, yeah, I'm feeling really anxious right now. And I feel it in my stomach. And oh, it makes sense that I'm feeling anxious. I've got this podcast with David. So I'm just going to sit, I'm going to sit with this emotion and just, welcome it here. And it passes through our nervous system. And so the new research shows that, if we make space for emotions, they will move through us and pass within 90 seconds to 120 seconds. So otherwise, they become a rock that gets carried around in our backpack for the rest of our life. Like if you think about what happens when we don't versus what happens when we do, it's pretty significant. And like I
Mm.
said, when we don't, we get over dysregulated, and then if we continue down that path, we end up with mental health issues. It really begins to impact our mental health. People then turn to substances or unhealthy coping behaviors like doom scrolling and obsessive gaming and those sorts of things to cope and numb and deflect. And again, that just creates a whole other slew of kind of situations. So
Yeah, and it opens, it's like, you've heard about the tree. It's like so many branches off a tree, especially if it's a big tree, you got so many branches off. It's like that's the whole point of a journey because, yes, it may be a smooth journey, but at the same time, you have to take diversions, you have to take those branches off just to make it a successful life. Because if you're a complete success, that's not right. It's got to have those diversions. It's got to have those branches. It's got to have whatever you want to describe it as. Like you got the big ocean. You got to have the rivers to go into the ocean to feed the ocean. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's had a perfect journey, and I think if they believe they have, they're lying to themselves. Because we're messy, complicated human beings, right? And we're
mm,
dealing with each other. We're interconnected, and we're all kind of messy and complicated. So I don't believe anybody's had a perfect journey. I think our journey, my journey, is what made me who I am. I'm certainly don't regret it. It's given me resiliency. It's given me deep understanding, empathy, and compassion, I think, to do what I do, and I do it well. So yeah, I think it's just honoring the road we're on and expecting those turns and twists, and just kind of taking it as it comes. But that's what resiliency and well-being gives us, is the ability to just go, okay, what do you got, world? Bring it on.
mm,
When we're not well and when we're carrying that heavy backpack and we're seeing the world through negativity and overwhelm and dysregulation, it makes those twists and turns and things that come up really, really challenging. And they kind of just knock us down, and it's hard to get back up. So I think that's why the healing and the growth and, reaching out and knowing we need each other. We cannot heal in isolation. We cannot do life in isolation, right? We can't be our best self by ourselves. We need each other.
yeah, and that's where having a partner will help you as well, because a partner can help you in so many ways, even if they are similar. And people will refer to this as trauma bonding sometimes, but I don't think it's trauma bonding. It's just a way of actually understanding one another for each other's needs.
Yeah, I think there could be healthy partners for sure, and I think there could be unhealthy partners that can actually, add potentially to people's um, uh, not being well, right? If we're dealing with somebody in a relationship who's abusive or, controlling, that can actually do more damage for sure.
Mm,
So I think it has to be a fair and not a perfect. I'm not saying a perfect relationship because that doesn't exist. But the other person has to have some, some compassion, some ability to take accountability. I think there has to be some of that dynamic, because I've seen and I've worked and I've supported a lot of people in very, very unhealthy relationships. Um, that just didn't go well. And until that person, they separated, and found other healthy relationships. That doesn't have to be a spouse either, right? It
mm,
can be friendships, it can be a professional, it can be coworkers. but somebody in your life who's somewhat healthy and can, and, again, just hold that safe space and makes you feel seen, heard, and understood.
And I would give the example, I know for a fact if you're in a narcissistic going into a relationship side of things, it's like if you're in a narcissistic relationship, you so fixed on that thinking it will be fixable and you can't get out of it as easily as you can. And then when you do, it's a big weight off you. But then that's where all the emotions will come out. That's where the tears will happen. And you feel a big relief because you can finally be free of actually that situation.
Yeah, you're right. I think at some point it'll come, where they feel free. But I also know I've got some friends who, were in very abusive narcissistic relationships. And, it took her a bit to get to that point where she felt free. She had a lot of guilt after she left for a while because, the financial burdens that she now had and didn't have before, and raising two children on her own, and thinking maybe she should have stayed. So there was probably 2 years of her really kind of trying to work through that before she came to that place of, no, no, I'm way better off. So again, it's a journey for sure, David. I think from the outside, we can go, oh, you're so much better off, but people have to come to that in their own time, in their own way, and hopefully they do. But yeah, it's tricky. Those unhealthy relationships are super tricky because sometimes, the fear of being alone and the fear of the unknown is scarier for people than staying in a relationship that's toxic or unhealthy. So it's people are complicated, relationships are complicated, for sure. But I know there's such great strength and empowerment in our own healing, where we can better see the, relationships that are unhealthy, where we can better bounce back from those situations. So without hope, there's nothing.
Mm. So, going into the present, and you said about your book as well, which we will promote as well for you. Tell us about how it is for you in the present and with your book included.
Well, things are great. So I just launched in October. I thought, self-publishing and, writing the book would be the hardest part of this piece, but I'm finding out it's actually the marketing. It's like that's a whole other world that I really didn't think about. So, I'm just trying to move into marketing my book. It I'm starting to get some feedback from readers in how impactful it's been, which it just makes my heart so happy because that really my number one intention with writing the book was to, inspire, encourage, or celebrate people who are on their own healing journey. And so that's fantastic. Doing some speaking engagements this year. I've actually been asked to come to Nigeria, Africa to speak at a mental health conference, which is super exciting. That'll be my first international conference that I speak at. I'm booked to speak at some women's conferences, which again is super exciting, doing lots of podcasts.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'm excited to kind of see what this year brings. Taking some time off. My husband and I are going to Peru for 3 weeks to hike Machu Picchu, where we're very active and we love hiking. That's our most
Mm.
favorite activity. So to combine traveling and hiking, we're super excited about that. So lots of exciting things happening this year. I'm launching my coaching business as well to do women-centered coaching. So just excited to see kind of what's coming up in the next year.
Yeah, and you talk
Twists and
about
turns.
you talk about marketing, though it is difficult to market the book, especially in this day of age. And I'm not condoning anyone who tries it because when you do encounter it, you will get the people who will say, "I like to do this for you," or if you do try to do the natural way, it's not as naturally progressing as quickly as you would want. But at the same time, it's about taking your time. Yes, it will be disheartening when you get like one person every so often, oh, I bought the book, or but if you don't want to go through the scam way of doing it, because that's what I call those people when you see people trying to advertise your book, you don't want that. You want to do it naturally, but you want success, and then that disheartens you again because you don't see those numbers creep up.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head, David. That's exactly it. It's really actually overwhelming with the requests I'm getting from LinkedIn or from, even emails and like, we'll promote your book, we'll promote your book. It only costs this much, right? And I'm not saying they should do those services for free. That's certainly not what I'm saying, but it's very overwhelming to go, okay, how do I do this? I've tried to pay a bit. It didn't really kind of translate to much. But it just seems like everybody's wanting you to buy their services. And I mean, I can get up to 20 emails a day of people wanting to review or promote my book. So it gets really overwhelming. There's just a lot of noise out there
Yeah.
in terms of the marketing piece. So you're right. I'm just trying to quiet it and just trust. I didn't write it to be on the, New York bestseller. I mean, that would be lovely, but that wasn't the intention. It was just, I just really tell myself that I'm just going to do the best I can and it will land with who it's meant to land with and it will resonate with who it's meant to resonate. And I
Yeah.
just kind of put it out to the universe and trust. And that kind of helps take a little bit of that pressure off for
Yeah,
sure.
it's like with the, podcast audio and visual, I put it on audio and visual and it's like I said, I get people like, it's like, no, I don't want to. And I'm firm about it. I get, like you said, you get the emails, you get the alerts saying, hi, I'm such and such. And I'm thinking, how genuine are you listening to it? Because you say you listen to it, but how genuine are you?
Yeah. And
Now,
it's
I have
interesting.
a statistics, so I know roughly where people are. And if they say I'm such and such, and I'm thinking, no, you're not. You're not in that percentage of people listening.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody wants to sell something. That's for sure. Is what it feels like anyways.
So going into the future, because obviously the future is glowing already, because you've already said about what you want to do for the next year. How do you see things going for yourself in the future? Because obviously it is going stronger. You're growing organically. You're growing naturally yourself.
I see continued abundance in my life. I see continued ability to impact. My hope is that my coaching grows, that I do groups, workshops, and retreats. I really want to make an impact. I want to make the most impact I possibly can. And I've just learned the women-centered coaching model through Dr. Claire Zammit, which is just an added level for women because not only do we have our unhealed traumas that create that monster in our head. That's what I call it in my book, is the monster in my head, that tells us we're not good enough, skinny enough, popular enough, rich enough, fill in the blank. But we also have the added aspect that we are living in a masculine power system. And those masculine power systems also create a lot of disconnect for us as women, disconnect from our feminine power. It says you have to be independent and you have to be strong and you have to be successful. That's the male power system. Whereas the feminine power system says, no, we need to be cooperative and interconnected and build each other up. And so we're trying to survive in this masculine power system. And by all accounts, we're successful, but yet we just feel this disconnect in our soul. And so Dr. Claire Zammit's model, I'm just so passionate about it, helps women identify those beliefs that are holding us back and really unpacks that. So it's beyond the traditional coaching model. The traditional coaching model was developed in the 70s for men by men. And so there's elements for sure of that, but it takes it to an added level to identify these glass ceilings and limiting beliefs because of the masculine power systems that we're in, and helps unpack them and rewrite the story and then move forward on accomplishing our goals as women and really finding the way to step into our power, because we're also told as women that you can't be powerful, right? You have to be quiet and you have to be small and you just go over there and into the corner and do your thing. It's like, no, as women, we need to rise up and we need to link arms and we need to take up space. That's what's going to help save this world. And I'm so, so, so excited with this model to step into that world and help women and empower women. And so I see in the next few years me being a world-class women-centered coach and not making a ripple, making a tsunami, and where we all stand up and we all rise as women. And I think that's what's gonna change the world. And I'm so, so, so excited.
And
So that's what
that's
I see.
that's good in vision and it's good excitement. Now, the promotion that I always like to ask is that you can talk about your book, anything that you want to promote. So you can promote your book, you can promote anything that people might want to reach out to you, because I know listeners will want to reach out to you and obviously read your book. How can they do that?
Awesome. So I'm from Canada. So my book is available on Amazon, on the Canadian Amazon and the States Amazon. So if you're interested in that, please order it. If you do order my book, I would love if you could leave me a review. That helps with the algorithms on Amazon as well. If you want to reach out to me or look at my coaching or my other workshops that I provide, you can go to my website, which is Trina Lee Kennedy. So TRINALEEKENNEDY.ca. And you can reach out through email. If you would like a signed copy of my book, you can send me an email and I'd be happy to sign a copy of my book and mail that out to you. We can arrange all the details through that through an email if you're interested in that. So those are probably the two best ways to my book and reach out on my website. I'm also on LinkedIn, Trina Kennedy. I'm on Instagram, Trina L Kennedy, and Facebook is Trina Lee Kennedy.
Okay, and obviously you said Amazon.ca and Amazon.com if anyone's listening. And what's the book called? Because I know they.
Yeah, so it is called From Trauma to Triumph and What Lies Between.
Okay, that's good. Last ultimate question. Helping people on their journey, like you've had the help yourself, and you've had people tell you, especially this lady you referred to, I forgot her name. What would you say to people to help them in their journey move forward?
Your feelings matter. You matter. You have incredible potential for greatness. Believe that, know that. The world needs that. Reach out to somebody who makes you feel seen, heard, and understood to help you if you're carrying that heavy backpack of rocks to start to unpack it. It's doable. It's hard work. It's messy, but I can guarantee you it is so, so worth it. And there's so many people out there who do care about you. And, you know, if you want to chat, reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you as well. I mean, the world needs all of us and we need to be healthy and well. You know, there's a lot of scary things happening and, you know, unsettling things happening in this world. And I get that. And that's not helping the situation for a lot of people. But when we can be, you know, the best versions of ourselves, that's when we're going to, you know, create that tsunami of change in the world.
I love that, and I'd just like to say thank you for sharing your journey with us today. It's just helps when you get individuals to say that there is always someone out there for everyone, and your words will impact those people with in concern.
I hope so. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you and your listeners today, David, and keep up the great work. And
Thank you.
congratulations on, you know, all those episodes. That's
Now, a
fantastic.
message
Thank you,
from
Trina.
Amy. Amy, it's over to you.
Hello, I am Amy Harrison. I'm the author of the book Feline Warrior Part 1 and Part 2, a fictional story that is written in a poetic format that is based on real-life events that could happen to anyone and intended only for relatable purposes. This story claws into Catgirl's past abuse. Catgirl is human and part feline, but truly a warrior who can handle anything because she is strong and fierce. She has been taken advantage of for far too long. Join her on her journey as she reaches freedom. Here are some poems from Feline Warrior. Tears flow. I no longer know what to do. I am no longer who I once was, and it is because I made a choice to use my voice, and that is okay, because what I had to say was true, unlike me and you. Now I see. I am free. I am me. I am Catgirl. Ultimately, be you. Always stay true. Do what you want to do, because every day is made new. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later. The Journey Podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.